Laboratory Delta 9K was, by galactic standards, a marvel of scientific achievement. It had 6 redundant safety protocols, 5 species of researchers, and 1 very annoyed human strapped to a table who was currently trying to scratch his nose with his shoulder. Subject remains unresponsive to visual intimidation stimuli, droned the automated log as a floating sphere pulsed red above the observation chamber. That's because he keeps falling asleep, hissed Dr. Kravix, a feathered trillion xenoneurologist who had spent 4 decades studying fear in over 600 species, none of which had ever reacted to his efforts with a yawn. Through the reinforced glass, the human raised an eyebrow. "You know I can hear you, right? The echo in here's doing most of the work." The scientists went still. Dr. Kravix turned toward the others, slowly folding his talons behind his back. "The translator," he said stiffly. "Did anyone disable it?" A junior researcher, spherical, gelatinous, and visibly trembling, wiggled a pseudopod. I thought it was standard protocol to leave it on for linguistic mapping." The human gave a thumbs up with the only hand not strapped down. "Appreciate it. Been trying to figure out if this was a prison, a dream, or a really niche escape room." "Subject exhibits humor response," mumbled Dr. Sill, an arachnoid biochemist whose voice sounded like a typewriter on anxiety meds. Dr. Kravix leaned toward the glass. "You are currently being evaluated under controlled xenopsychological testing parameters for your species' fear thresholds." The human nodded. "Cool. I figured that out when you pumped that last gas in here. Smelled like the bus depot in Newark after a thunderstorm. Took me right back." "You found it familiar?" "Yeah, kind of nostalgic. Bus fumes, wet concrete, the faint scream of a guy in the bathroom stall losing a fight to a raccoon. Classic Thursday night." Dr. Kravix turned slowly, one eye twitching independently from the rest of his face. "This is the 5th compound. 5. Each calibrated to induce neurological panic responses in 98% of galactic biotypes, and he finds it comforting." "Should we proceed to neurospike stimulation?" asked the technician. "No," snapped Kravix. "That's for stage 3. We're not even past baseline diagnostics." Inside the room, the human shifted slightly in his restraints, settling into what could only be described as nap posture. His name, not that anyone had bothered to ask, was Jason. 32, night clerk. Once did 2 tours in a desert where the most common fear response was hearing your own name shouted by someone holding a clipboard. This question mark. This was spa day by comparison. "Vitals are stable. Neural patterns indicate mild boredom, elevated sarcasm potential," said the lab AI. The research team huddled. "This could be an anomaly," whispered Dr. Sill. "Maybe his brain is defective, or shielded somehow." "He's from a Class 6 Deathworld," muttered Kravix. "They live surrounded by apex predators, unstable weather systems, and their own infrastructure. The species is supposed to be skittish, volatile, easily startled." Inside the chamber, Jason cleared his throat. "Hey, if you guys are going to keep talking like I'm not here, could I at least get a snack or something? All this pretending to be scared is burning calories." That one hit hard. The gelatinous assistant, known as Bloop, blinked all 12 of his photoreceptors. "He's mocking us." "That's not mockery," said Jason. "That's years of retail experience. I've seen things squishy. You ever try explaining a 2-for-1 deal to a man in a tinfoil hat who thinks the Slurpee machine is stealing his thoughts? Is that a metaphor?" "It's trauma," Jason replied flatly. Kravix tapped his datapad hard enough to bend the interface. "We move to Phase 2. Deploy Tox Delta. Full concentration." "Sir, Tox Delta is potent," said Bloop nervously. "It's been known to cause spontaneous defecation in Kraven battle mines." "Perfect," growled Kravix. In the next room, the vents opened with a hiss. Jason sniffed the air. His face twitched. The scientists leaned forward eagerly. "Ah," he said. "Now that is New Jersey in the summer." Kravix froze. "What?" "Yeah. Smells like hot garbage, melted rubber, and whatever chemical cocktail leaks from sewer grates when it's 90 degrees by 9 a.m. I almost miss it." Dr. Sill quietly unplugged her neural scanner. Jason tilted his head back, eyes closed. "I used to sit outside my cousin's apartment building eating day-old pizza and listening to rats fight over cigarette butts. You people don't know the meaning of fear." Dr. Kravix turned to the group. We are suspending chemical exposure protocols. Clearly his biology has adapted in unforeseen ways. The word adapted triggered murmurs. That wasn't supposed to happen during active testing. You guys abducted the wrong dude, Jason added. I'm not scared of gas. I'm scared of late bills, unflushable toilets, and someone saying, we need to talk. This stuff, it's like Fabrizi for trauma. Subject is emotionally desensitized, Syl said softly, typing with her front limbs. This is beyond our models. Beyond, said Kravix. This is heresy to the scientific method. Jason gave a wide smile. Alarms blared. Security alert, said the AI. Subject facial expression exceeds aggression threshold for 3 sectors. Oh, relax, Jason muttered. I'm just amused. You're trying to scare someone who survived 3 summers in a neighborhood with open sewage and recreational fireworks. That can't be real, Bloop whispered. I once saw a 6-year-old light a Roman candle with a cigarette. That kid's probably a senator now. There was a pause. Kravix finally turned away from the glass. Fine, no more chemicals, no more gas. Let's go psychological. Prepare the virtual environment chamber. Let's see how he handles simulated terror. Jason perked up. Oh hey, are we doing VR now? I've got a strong stomach. Just don't throw me into anything that looks like a tax audit. Jason watched as the table he was strapped to slowly tilted upright, hissing softly like an air mattress at the end of its life. The restraints retracted with an unnecessarily dramatic click. The door ahead of him opened with what he assumed was meant to be a terrifying screech of metal. It sounded more like a grocery store cart with one bad wheel. Welcome to the virtual environment testing chamber, announced a robotic voice that sounded like someone had taught a microwave to be smug. Jason stepped inside the chamber with the ease of someone who had once slept through a tornado siren. The chamber was massive, hexagonal, and lined with an array of emitters, projectors, and alien tech that looked like it had been sponsored by a sci-fi villain with a flair for theater. We're ready to begin Phase 2, said Dr. Kravix over the intercom. His voice had that special kind of confidence reserved for people who were absolutely sure this time would work. Jason gave a thumbs up toward the nearest blinking camera. Fire away, Featherhead. The lights dimmed. The chamber floor shimmered beneath him and vanished. In its place, a rocky outcrop jutted into a bottomless abyss under a sky full of writhing storm clouds. Lightning cracked above. Distant howls echoed. A clawed, 6-eyed predator prowled the edges of the rocks, baring teeth the size of bananas. Jason blinked. Cool graphics. He took a step forward. The predator charged. Jason didn't flinch. He raised an eyebrow instead. Ah, he said. This reminds me of that Halloween in '09 when my idiot cousin took a pit bull to a haunted corn maze. Guy in a werewolf suit is probably still in therapy. The simulated beast stopped, confused. Its neural script began to loop. Up in the observation deck, the scientists stared in silence. He didn't react, whispered Bloop, frantically consulting fear response manuals. The creature was designed using apex predators from 12 different planets. Jason walked past the frozen beast, waved at it, and continued along the jagged cliff. Simulation Variant 2, barked Kravix. The sky turned blood red. The landscape shifted to a desolate battlefield. Explosions shook the ground. Screams rang through the smoke. Charred skeletons clawed their way from the soil. An endless war unfolded in front of him. Jason whistled. Man, this looks like every online multiplayer lobby I've ever been in. All that rage, and for what? A skin pack. The AI escalated. Flames burst from the ground. A massive tentacled creature emerged from the clouds, shrieking in 19 frequencies designed to bypass conscious resistance and strike terror directly into the subconscious. Jason clapped slowly. Now that's a boss fight. What's it called? Tentacle overcompensation? The beast roared. Jason squinted. You guys ever heard of Cthulhu? Because this feels like fan fiction. Back in the lab, Doctor. Syl's limbs twitched. The neural readings show minimal stress. He's not just immune, he's bored. We've created terror constructs based on the deepest psychological models of the universe, hissed Kravix. Why isn't he breaking? Jason turned in a slow circle as the war raged around him. You want real fear? Try getting a call from your bank at 8:01 a.m. on a Monday, or running into your ex at your own family reunion. This? He gestured at the apocalyptic hellscape. "This is just Saturday morning cartoons with better effects." "Simulation Variant 5, snapped Kravix. The world twisted. Jason now stood in an endless office cubicle farm. Fluorescent lights flickered. A fax machine hummed. A supervisor appeared holding a coffee mug that said, "World's #1 micromanager." Jason actually recoiled. "Whoa, okay, that's too real." The observation room lit up with hopeful signals. "We have something," shouted Bloop. "Elevated heart rate, mild pupil dilation." The supervisor approached. "I need those TPS reports by noon," it droned. Jason broke out into a visible sweat. Kravix leaned forward. "We found it. The fear." Then Jason burst out laughing. "Sorry, just had flashbacks to my first job at a tech support center. They'd make us clock out to use the bathroom." The supervisor vanished. Jason wiped a tear from his eye. "Nice try, though. You almost had me. Trauma from middle management is a whole genre." Dr. Sill flopped against the console, 6 eyes blinking out of sync. "This is beyond comprehension. He laughs at fear. He treats it like a joke." Jason spoke again, walking through the now flickering simulation. "Fear's not a monster in the closet. It's when your landlord forgets your building is in a flood zone, or when the bus skips your stop and it's 3 a.m. and below freezing. This simulation feels like therapy." Kravix's beak twitched. "Deactivate the chamber." The room dissolved into sterile white once more. Jason stood in the center, arms crossed. He looked around. "Well, that was fun. Can we do something useful now? Maybe a sandwich? Or is that another test?" A long silence followed. Then Kravix's voice came again, lower, tighter, as if holding back the mental breakdown of 17 doctorates being rendered useless. "You are not typical." Jason smirked. "Buddy, I'm not even the weirdest guy on my block." The chamber doors opened. 2 guards, quadrupedal insectoids with nervous posture, escorted him out. As Jason left, he tossed one last comment over his shoulder. "If you're still trying to break me, might I suggest simulating a phone call from unknown number at 6 a.m. That one gets me every time." The door slid shut behind him. The High Administrator's chamber wasn't designed for comfort. It was designed for intimidation. It loomed like a cathedral built by someone with an architecture degree and unresolved emotional issues. High arches, shadowed corners, glowing panels pulsing in ominous blue. 17 species had gathered, each seated behind a translucent podium, some levitating, some hissing softly, others secreting something onto the floor that the janitorial staff would later have strong words about. Dr. Kravix stood before them, feathers ruffled, dignity in tatters. "Our findings are incomplete," he admitted. A groan echoed from a quadrupedal delegate shaped like a melted obelisk. "You called this assembly for an incomplete report. This human, this Jason, represents something we've never encountered before. He is immune to psychological fear triggers, immune to biochemical fear inducers, and worst of all," he paused for dramatic effect, "he's emotionally unaffected by existential danger." A long pause followed. Finally, the High Administrator's hologram shimmered into place above the chamber. Its form constantly shifted to match each viewer's ideal of authority. A robed elder, a towering AI, a matron with 8 eyes. "Summarize," it said. Kravix nodded grimly. The human subjected to our most refined fear tests did not react as expected. Instead, he recounted personal anecdotes about Earth that mirrored the effects of our fear compounds. In short, what terrifies most life forms reminds him of home. From the side, the Arachnian delegate tapped her mandibles together. "You're saying Earth's environment is more hostile than our most advanced psychological warfare?" "In some places," Kravix muttered. "Yes." Bloop, the gelatinous assistant now promoted to biological curiosity liaison, squelched nervously. The subject described growing up between 3 factories, one of which turned the snow purple every February. A gasp spread through the chamber. He also referenced a summer where a chemical spill caused the evacuation of several human settlements, Kravix continued. He found it nostalgic, like a vacation. "You're making this up," someone whispered. "I wish I were." The Corvinite representative, a species known for wearing elaborate hazard suits at all times, raised a shimmering claw. "If humans can endure toxic environments without systemic collapse, They pose a significant containment risk. There were nods. One particularly slimy diplomat let out a squelching burp of agreement. I propose quarantine, the security delegate barked. Lock their species to their homeworld, prevent off-world expansion. And how exactly, countered the Arachnian, do you quarantine a species that treats industrial runoff like therapy and sees radioactive zones as affordable housing? I've seen their documentaries, a voice muttered. They barbecue next to supervolcanoes. Kravix lifted a trembling wing. He did mention summer grilling on asphalt rooftops during air quality emergencies. Even the administrator's shimmering image paused, the silence pregnant with horror and confusion. They know it's dangerous, Bloop added, and they do it anyway, for fun. The administrator's image finally spoke again, voice reverberating through the walls. Then we must assume this is not an anomaly. This may be an evolutionary pathway, based on suffering. A collective shiver spread across the room. Even species without spines managed to replicate the motion. Do we have any data on how widespread this phenomenon is? Asked a delegate from the diplomatic corps. We've only studied one, Kravix said, but he claimed that many from his region had similar resistance. What region? Someone asked. There was a pause as Bloop consulted his notes. Detroit. No further questions were asked. The administrator's form pulsed. Prepare a proposal. This species is to be reclassified. To what? Biological anomaly. Category 1. Unintended superadaptation. It paused. And potentially, strategic asset. Several voices erupted at once. You're not seriously considering. They're unpredictable. They think eating cheese from a can is normal, but the administrator held firm. If they can endure what our best can't even simulate, then they are more than primitives. They are useful. Meanwhile, Jason was lounging in his new quarters, upgraded from test subject to person of interest. He'd traded the slab for a reclining chair, the nutrient paste for something that tasted vaguely like coffee, and the sterile silence for an old-school Earth magazine someone had brought over as a cultural comfort item. He was halfway through a poorly translated article about earthen mating rituals and their relation to sugar distribution when the door slid open. Kravix entered, flanked by 2 armored guards. Jason looked up and raised his cup. Afternoon, Doc. Try another gas variant and need someone to breathe it for you. We're past that, Kravix muttered. You've triggered a reclassification of your species. Jason raised an eyebrow. Reclassified? You mean like endangered or upgraded to premium? You're now considered a Class 1 biological anomaly. Sounds important. It is. We've never encountered a species whose evolutionary trajectory includes emotional numbness to industrial-scale hazard exposure. Frankly, it's disturbing. Jason leaned back. Buddy, I had a pet lizard that glowed in the dark. We called it Sparky. Thought it was cool. Vet said it wasn't supposed to do that. Kravix sighed. The council is considering recruitment. Jason blinked. Recruitment? You want me to work for you? I thought I was a prisoner. Technically, you still are, but now you're valuable. Jason grinned. So it's like getting promoted from fast food cashier to night manager without the raise. Got it. There are parts of the galaxy we can't explore. Too toxic, too unstable, too dangerous for any known species. Jason nodded slowly. But not too dangerous for a guy who once survived 6 months living behind a tire factory because rent was cheap. Exactly. Jason rubbed his chin. What's the pay? Kravix hesitated. We're still working on what that would look like. Well, let me help, Jason said. It's got to include hazard pay, weekly meals that don't taste like sadness, and 1 Earth luxury item delivered monthly, my choice. What kind of item? Jason smiled. Cheese puffs, the radioactive orange kind. It'll help me feel right at home. The ship designated Expedition Unit Theta 3 was not built for comfort. It was built for containment. Layers of biofilters, hazard locks, and isolation fields made it less of a starship and more of a glorified petri dish with a propulsion system. Jason stood at the airlock, fully suited up, well, suited up in the galactic sense. His protective gear was a lightly padded tunic and a pair of borrowed alien boots that squeaked. Dr. Kravix and Bloop stood nervously behind the sealed glass, observing from what they assumed was a safe distance. Both wore full hazard gear that resembled a mix between a deep-sea diving suit and a medieval panic attack. "We'll be monitoring your vitals closely," Kravik said through the comms, voice slightly distorted. "This world has previously liquefied the exoskeletons of 2 Corvinian survey teams." "Cool," Jason replied, adjusting his gloves. "Remind me what we're calling this place again." "Designation PX9, locally referred to as the Scream Planet," Bloop chimed in helpfully. "Because the soil emits a high-pitched wail when exposed to sunlight." Jason blinked. "That's metal." The outer door cycled open. Hot, shimmering air rolled in like a tidal wave of chemical despair. Jason stepped out into the atmosphere of PX9. Immediately, every monitor in the control room lit up. The sensors screamed. The AI began listing hazard warnings in 30 languages: toxic particulate density, lethal, radiation levels, unsafe for unshielded carbon-based life, airborne corrosive index, maximum, ground stability, inconsistent. Jason sniffed the air and tilted his head. "This smells like summer near the landfill back home. You ever get that real thick, humid stink that makes your teeth itch? That's the good stuff." In the control room, Kravik made a strangled noise. Jason trudged forward. Each step crunched against violet dust that hissed audibly. In the distance, the soil did in fact scream, a soft, prolonged metallic wail that rose in pitch as the sunlight hit. Jason paused to take it in. "Man, you guys don't know what you're missing. This is what it felt like when the AC broke at my high school and the janitor opened the windows to let the heat out. We all thought we were going to melt into the desks." Kravik slammed his fist against the console. "He's not just surviving, he's reminiscing." Bloop oozed nervously. "Should we evacuate the mission control bay?" No, we need the data. He might be our only way into regions like this." Jason reached the beacon, squatted down, and placed the scanner. As he stood up, the ground rumbled slightly. Steam vents opened around him. The temperature spiked another 12 degrees. Jason loosened the collar of his tunic. "Oh yeah, that's more like it. This is just like that July heatwave when the city lost power for a week and everyone started grilling meat in the streets. Felt like the world was ending. Great times." "Heartbeat remains steady," the AI reported. "Cognitive functions, fully active. Emotional state, mild nostalgia." Kravik's head drooped. "We've entered the realm of science fiction." Jason started his walk back toward the ship. He casually kicked a glowing rock and watched it explode in a puff of green flame. "Okay, that part was new," he muttered. "Kind of like 4th of July in the sketchy neighborhood." "You grew up in this level of hazard?" Bloop squeaked. Jason laughed. "You're underestimating what a lack of zoning laws can do to a town. One wrong permit and boom, fireworks warehouse next to a daycare. You learn to live with it." The outer door hissed open behind him as he re-entered the ship. He pulled off his helmet, tousled his hair, and gave a satisfied sigh. Well, that was refreshing. Kravik stared at him through the window like he was watching a deity emerge from fire. "You realize that world is considered uninhabitable by every standard of known biology," Kravik said slowly. "Not every standard," Jason shrugged. "Just yours. You walked through it, like it was nothing." "It wasn't nothing. I mean, it kind of reminded me of that one summer when the sewage treatment plant exploded and the mayor told everyone it was part of a long-term infrastructure test." "We need to test more worlds," Bloop whispered. Jason pointed a finger. "Hang on now. Let's not get greedy. One poisonous hellhole a week, max. I need recovery time. I've got shows to watch." "Recovery time," Kravik said. "You are. This is not normal." Jason grinned. "Welcome to Earth." Back on the research station, a new report was compiled. Subject: Jason, human, Earth-based, mission. Result: complete success. Exposure levels: fatal to 98.3% of known species. Human reaction: mild enthusiasm. Subheader: Subject compared PX9 to a hot week in Cleveland. Galactic leaders began to convene. Earth, once labeled primitive and unremarkable, was now listed under high-priority biological reassessment. New terms were invented: adaptive hazard familiarity, neurochemical exposure immunity, nostalgic resistance to catastrophe. Jason, unaware of the full impact of his walk across a screaming hellscape, was already lounging in his upgraded quarters. The AI brought him something that tried to be root beer. It failed. Still, he sipped. "So," he said aloud, "what's next? You gonna drop me into a lava lake and ask if it smells like home-cooked chili?" No one responded, but 5 departments were already preparing proposals. Jason woke up to the smell of something that wasn't quite coffee, but wasn't quite not coffee either. The lab AI, apparently now doubling as his butler, had taken to providing what it referred to as approximate morning comforts. He stretched, yawned, and cracked his neck. Then he noticed the blinking red light on the wall. "Oh, good," he muttered. "Another surprise meeting with creatures who don't blink." The door slid open, and instead of the usual trickle of researchers in hazard gear, it was the High Administrator's envoy, a cloaked being with a voice like polished glass and eyes that shimmered in multiple timelines. "We require your presence," it said. Jason sipped his approximation of coffee. "I just got up. The council is waiting." He sighed and stood. "Let me guess. You want to test me on a star made of plasma next? See if I can jog through it like it's a beach in July?" The envoy blinked, sideways. Once again, Jason found himself in the absurd cathedral chamber, surrounded by enough diplomatic authority to make a black hole feel underdressed. He sauntered up to the podium like someone arriving late to a PTA meeting and not remotely sorry about it. The administrator's voice rang out. "We have reviewed all data collected during your excursion to PX9. Jason took another sip. "Good times. We have also analyzed the implications of your physiological and psychological tolerance for conditions we consider fatal." "Yup. Turns out growing up in chemical smog and budget housing has perks." The administrator's tone darkened. "You have become a point of galactic contention." Jason raised an eyebrow. "I'm flattered." "Security Councils suggest containment," another delegate growled. "You are biologically unpredictable and functionally immune to environmental deterrents." Jason chuckled. "Containment? Sure. You think you can stop Earth from spreading just by locking the doors? You ever hear of Craigslist? TikTok? Humanity doesn't need warships. We have cargo shorts and poor impulse control." Several delegates recoiled. "Your kind could destabilize entire ecosystems," another protested. Jason nodded. "We did that on Earth too. Still doing it, actually. But hey, we recycle now, so progress?" The administrator's voice cut through the tension. "There is another option." The chamber fell silent. "We invite humanity to join the consortium, under one condition." Jason tilted his head. "Let me guess. You want us to be your hazard crew, the canaries in the cosmic coal mine. You are uniquely suited to explore and survive the regions we have deemed beyond reach. Toxic moons, acidic atmospheres, failing stars." Jason smiled. "You want the people who eat fast food off car hoods in 40-degree heat to go where your best-trained bioengineered specialists melt." "Yes," the administrator replied. "That is accurate." Jason took a deep breath and leaned against the railing. "You know what? I'll do it." Stunned silence. "But," he said, raising a finger, "we do it our way. We bring our snacks, our music, and our very questionable safety standards. And if you even think about making us wear those skin-tight hazard suits, I walk." "Agreed," the administrator said too quickly. Jason smiled. "Then, on behalf of Earth, we accept." Jason leaned back in the pilot seat of the newly commissioned HSV dumpster fire, the first of Earth's hazard exploration fleet. The controls were jury-rigged with human comfort in mind, duct-taped levers, a cup holder too large for standard galactic flasks, and a bobblehead of a snarling raccoon wearing a hard hat. The crew? Entirely human, each one hand-picked for their ability to eat questionable food, laugh during emergencies, and ignore flashing warning signs. Their first mission, the Corvan Rings, a system so toxic even light refused to pass through twice. Jason flipped on the comms. "All right, folks, sunscreen on, gas masks optional. Let's go see what horror looks like when you've already survived a high school with asbestos insulation." Behind him, his co-pilot cackled. "This one time in Cleveland, the river caught fire." Jason grinned. "Perfect. That's our energy." The reports began flooding in. Mission status, complete. Casualties, 0. Incidents, 5. Quotes of concern, 73. Most repeated phrase, "That's it?" Entire sectors previously written off as terminal zones were now being charted by humans who treated acidic lakes like hot tubs and described radiation storms as mildly spicy. At first, the galaxy was amazed. Then, they were afraid, because the humans weren't adapting. They'd always been like this, built by chaos, tempered by pollution, conditioned by trauma and bad municipal planning. They didn't survive the universe. They belonged in it. A live broadcast aired globally, the first human ambassador to the Galactic Consortium stepping onto an alien world in cargo shorts and aviators, waving a handheld air quality meter that had melted halfway through the walk. Behind him, the human flag planted in radioactive soil flapped triumphantly. And across the stars, the phrase that would echo in diplomatic chambers forever was spoken. "You call this deadly?" My hometown had 2 Superfund sites and a raccoon mafia. This is vacation.